everyone, and welcome to our January 2026, now technically February, Galactic Gathering for Star Wars Galaxy's Restoration. We're going to begin in just a moment. We're going to wait just a few more seconds to let any last few people get in before we start. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Galactic Gathering for January 2026. A couple housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded and we will take questions from the chat at designated times. I'll talk through that in just a moment. We're going to go through our agenda first. We're going to start with a roadmap preview for 2026. We'll spend about 10 minutes on that, followed by answering your live questions. We'll collect questions from the chat, and you can ask those anytime, and then we'll answer them at 3 designated slots after we finish our main content. We're then going to go into a Syndicate Swell and our Shaddaa teaser for about 10 minutes, followed by answering your questions from the chat. And then finally, we'll go into a panel discussion of topics from your submissions for about 25 minutes, followed by final questions. And just a note on those submissions, we did synthesize the topics from those into a group of questions that we'll answer as part of our panel, as opposed to going through each individual question that was submitted. And we'll also have some rapid fire questions we'll address at the end. But first, some quick introductions. For those of you who don't know me, I go by Aconite. I led the development team here for about 3 years. I'm now mostly retired and just get to do fun things that I want to work on, but I want to allow our panelists to introduce themselves as well. We'll start with Orange, and I'd love for you to tell us about yourself, what you do for the project, and what you're most excited for about 2026.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Aconite, for organizing all of this. As you can kind of see, it's we've stepped up production. We want to see how you guys think about this. But yes, I'm Orange. I'm lead developer. I started on the project, I think about 3 years ago, and I took over lead development. I should have looked this up a couple years ago, I think, a year or two ago. And I am really looking forward to this upcoming update that we'll be talking about shortly as well, because it's got a lot of really cool end game, really fun like progression stuff, and it's finally going to make sense of the GCW. And I'm also really looking forward to working on Shaddaa a bit more. So.
All right, Cfarf, let's hear from you. Tell us about yourself, what you do for the project, and what you're most excited about for 2026.
Yeah, hi, I'm Cfarf, art lead for Star Wars Galaxy's Restoration, and I've been here for about, I've been on the team for about 2 years now. Very excited to show some Shaddaa stuff and get people on that planet and playing it, and we have a lot of fun stuff on the horizon. So, and even before that. So, yeah, thank you.
All right. So first up, we have our 2026 roadmap. What's coming in 2026? This is a high-level overview. First and foremost, Publish 1.4 Shatterpoint is first up on deck, and we're going to talk about each of these in more detail in just a second. Next up, we've got the 5th anniversary update, which you can expect in May 2026. And then, as always, we'll have some additional updates where we aren't too sure how much shape they have yet and when they'll happen, but you can expect another large game update, at least one, in late 2026. And then we're off to 2027. And with that, just to briefly talk about Shatterpoint, our first big thing we're excited to announce is that Shatterpoint will be live on February 15th. That's our next publish and the final of our restoration-based publishes. A quick preview of everything coming in that will include Prestige, Seasonal Parsecs, GCW Crackdowns and Uprisings, Galactic Supply Lines, Intelligence Missions, Flashpoints, the Battle of Restus, the Battle of Echo Base, as well as Factional Base updates. Stay tuned after the gathering and in the coming days, you'll have more details about what's coming with Publish 1.4. Next up, we're going to go into some previews about the current shape of the remaining updates for the year, but keep in mind these are preliminary and subject to change. Our first planned update is the 5th anniversary update coming in May. Our focus of that update is on community and social experiences, so we're targeting major player city updates, tailor and merchant profession enhancements, economic balancing, equity markets and savings accounts, as well as activity system upgrades. And then after that, for the rest of the year, you can expect us to be focusing on new content, including dungeon and quest content, world bosses, Jedi Knight Master and the Force ranking system, the long-awaited Inquisition, as well as lightsaber crystal customization. And with that, we're going to take a break for any audience questions. I'm going to check and see if any have been submitted. And if not, feel free to ask. We have a few seconds here. And we are not including any, quote, dumbass troll questions. That is a quote from our staff. I do see a question about what lightsaber customization will include. Orange, do you want to talk about where we're going and what that vision currently?
Share this question a bit. We are looking at, first and foremost, making color customization way more customizable, you might say. We know that the current system where like stats are tied to colors is not really what anyone wanted. It's just kind of where we landed initially. And so there will be a lot of really advanced ways to customize both the stats and the colors of sabers through content as well as some other things. But we're still kind of coming up with final designs there. Cfarf, this has been something you've been really interested in. I don't know if you want to share any more. Feel free to riff.
Yeah, I'm mostly excited about the color customization. I think that would be great. Giving players the ability to choose whatever color they want in their lightsaber. I think that's something that I get really excited about when I think about. We talked about some other possibilities that I'm not going to go into that, there's all sorts of technical challenges that we have to work through in order to make some of these things happen. But yeah, it seems like it could be a lot of fun if we get it out there for people.
Great. I did see a question about the stock market or equity markets. I'll take a moment to talk about that because it's one of the few things I'm still working on and really excited about. So we're going to establish what is effectively a in-game equity market where the internal mechanics of what influence the value of the stock will be affected by in-game actions. For example, you'll be able to invest in the Income Corporation, which builds both civilian craft as well as some of the X-Wings that are currently saving the rebellion, and the stock price may be influenced, for example, by high destruction of rebellion ships, leading to a requirement that more be created, which then creates more value in the company. And there will also be a dilution rate, a growth rate, and a value floor for these stocks. So There's going to be probably about, at the start, at least 20 different companies that you can invest in that will be controllable based on in-game behavior of players. There will also be, I'll just cover savings accounts too, traditional methods for players to save money and earn interest on money that stays in the bank over time, as well as some additional financial market options we'll be covering at a later date. Going to our list of questions here. Tailor and Architect enhancements. I feel like the big thing that people will be excited to hear about is the coloring session and our enhancements to color palettes. Cfarf, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's
this update looks like. First and foremost, key places. We've previewed these before, but want to highlight them. We'll have a casino with lots of new games, including in-game UIs to play those games where you can compete to win special prizes, enter the high net worth club, as well as just gamble all your money away, because if you know anything about me, you know I love credit sinks. We'll also have a zoo. We've heard that there's those shiny creatures you may be interested in, and those may be making their way to the galaxy, as well as new and exotic creatures that will be available at the zoo, and other enhancements to creature handlers and bioengineers are expected with this publish. And finally, luxury to a new level. You'll be able to browse the shops at Shaddaa, which will have exotic materials and very, very exclusive clothing and items for only the wealthiest in the galaxy to enjoy. Some other content we're excited to highlight that will be coming with this publish. We'll have a new heroic raiding Gracchus the Hutt's palace. We will have the Zillow Squadron theme park. What could that be? Stay tuned. Galaxy-wide criminality systems, expansions to smuggler and spice mechanics, and more. And we're also excited to share that we anticipate at this time that the Syndicate Swell will launch in 2027. With that, we're going to turn it over to Cfarf for a live preview. I do need to figure out how to give him permission to do that. Maybe I just need to stop sharing my screen.
all right. There it is. And here we are. We are in Shaddaa. There's still plenty of work to do, but a lot of the work that has been done already has given us the tools to complete the rest of this world. And we basically spent the past year and a half talking about the design direction, the art, what are these buildings going to look like? What's the vibe going to feel like? What's the environment like? What are these? How is the layout going to feel as you move through the space? And we had, a lot of discussions about materials and how the various areas would be built. So where I am right now, we are in the tourist district. We're in the bank, which is right outside of the starport. One of the things we talked about was, how do we make this feel brand new, but also feel familiar, like it's Star Wars Galaxies? So you can tell that we're in the middle of this bank right now, and it does have a very familiar layout. It's got, the bank terminals in the middle. It's got the bazaar terminals. It has this circular square structure where you're sort of encompassed in these walls. And it has the overhead covering, which on other planets is usually a type of fabric tarp hanging overhead. But in this, because we're on this giant city planet that where the sky is covered in smog and pollution, we have this nice blue holographic sky for people to get a taste of nice blue skies. So it's just one fun feature that we decided to throw in. So we kind of approached a very the starport in a similar way. We want it to feel new. It's a brand new structure. It doesn't look like any of the other starports, but when you move through the starport, it's going to feel very familiar. You're going to run around this semicircle. Your muscle memory is going to feel exactly the same. It's going to bring you around the same direction and end you up right in the middle of the starport. There's going to be this very bright, lively tourist district when you first come into Nar Shaddaa. There's going to be lots of shops. Aconite talked about the zoo. We talked about the high-class shops where you might be able to find some new schematics, some materials for some tailor clothes. But when you leave the tourist district, there's going to be that's when things get a little bit seedier, and there's these dark alleyways, and you'll have the civic district. You'll have Dracu's Palace will be in the civic district. So yeah, that's basically like just a short little preview. I'm not going to go too far, but are there any questions, Aconite?
Why don't you show us a little bit about how you make this, right? Like let's get a little behind the scenes. Can you show us a little bit about
Sure.
How this comes together?
Yeah, we could take a look at a Blender file here. This is just one Blender file for a single building in Nar Shaddaa. We talked about how do we make this city that is that feels like it goes endlessly both up and down. And one way we decided to tackle that was have these like modular building systems that we could put together. So that way we can basically have these like inserts that we can stick inside these taller giant structures that represent different shops and buildings that you can enter into. So this is just like one example of basically how we would create one of these modular buildings. We also have a Blender file that represents the world, and basically this is synced up with our data tables that actually build the world for us. So we had to create a lot of custom tooling to be able to do this. We had to write our own scripts that basically was able to match these things one for one. And but it's worked out, and it's saved us a lot of time and energy from rather than doing it the old way that Sony did. So that's definitely helped us out quite a bit. You can kind of see here how some of these modular things are put together. So these can be various shops along a street, and they basically can get swapped out, and we can update these things as we need to. So as we're building out content, we can take something that is just like a placeholder and it's a closed building. There's lots of buildings in Mos Eisley that you can't walk into. So there are those in Nar Shaddaa, but as we build out content and want to place NPCs in some of these various things, we can just take one of these closed buildings and drop in something else that's open and has an interior with an NPC that you can purchase things from.
Great. And I know one question we got was they wanted to see, just up to the skyline. Could we go back in game and just see kind of
Sure.
like all of the different skyscrapers a little bit? Because I know there's a lot both up and down that goes into the overall scenic atmosphere as well.
Yeah, we can actually take a run back here to the back of the bank and look off in the distance. We have some speeders zooming by, and then the depths, which one thing that will be pretty fun for players is that you're not going to just be stuck on one level. You will be able to go up and down and traverse this environment. So sometimes you're going to be up top and very high up away from everything, and sometimes you're all the way down in these dark valleys or in these alleyways. So I think that'll be a lot of fun for players to explore and to figure out like where can they actually go. Sometimes you might think that something is just decoration in the background, but you can actually end up getting to that area.
Great. So we'll take, I know a few questions that came up about the planet. One was about scale. So how will Nar Shaddaa scale with other planets? I'll provide a little context on that. So you'll probably want to think of Nar Shaddaa more as an adventure planet like Kashyyyk or Mustafar. So it's not going to be a 16,000 by 16,000 or 32,000 by 32,000 meter planet by any means, but it definitely will have plenty of navigable space. We did get a question about using speeders on Nar Shaddaa. Cfarf, would you like to talk about our plans for that?
Yeah, we're actually we're going to have these various districts and places that you can get to. Some of them will be a little bit separated from each other. We're not going to be driving around on these roads with speeders, but there are going to be speeder tunnels and speederways that you can pull a speeder out and zoom from one area to the next. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. It's also going to provide some variety as you go to these various areas. Each one looks a little bit different, and the environment feels different. The lighting feels different, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
I know we got some questions about rooms you can purchase or rent out. I'll talk about that a little bit. We currently do not have plans to implement any apartment style housing due to some of our other larger goals around how we keep community together and promote activity on the server. However, with the hotel as well as the arena, you will be able to rent those spaces for player events, and they will have some extra special customizations and features related to that. We also got another question, will the planet have a space system? Currently undecided. We are still thinking about it and how it might play into the overall publish, but we have not made a formal decision as to whether the larger Nalhutta system will be included in space. Cfarf, we also got a question here I think is a great one for you to talk about. As you've been building these modular systems, is that going to aid you in potentially making new housing structures for players, kind of irrelevant to Nar Shaddaa itself, but as you've been experimenting with building these modular structures and interiors?
Well, yes, it does. This process of building the planet has helped us with our tools, and we've learned a lot while doing this. So player housing is definitely something that I'm excited to tackle after this, after Nar Shaddaa gets a little bit further along. And I know the rest of the team is excited to do some more with player housing. I don't know necessarily that modular, being able to like put a building together by pieces for players. I'm not sure. Like I know bases, they have the turrets and things like that, but I'm not sure about modular player houses. That would be an interesting one to look into.
Great. All right. And with that, we're going to move on to our next session of the programming here. I'm going to switch back to sharing my screen. So thanks again for that design preview, and we did that break for audience questions. So now we're going to jump into our panel discussion. So each of these is based on a question or series of questions you asked us that we put together into kind of different themes that we thought we'd spend some time talking about. We'll jump into our first one, which was very popular, Jedi and power curve management. We heard lots of questions about Jedi balance, acquisition, PvE, PvP, how Jedi fits into all of these systems. So the question we want to talk about, and Orange, will start with you. How are you designing this aspirational alpha class without collapsing class diversity or trivializing non-Jedi gameplay?
That really is the question, isn't it? I will try not to spend the rest of the hour talking about this, but it's definitely something that we literally could talk about forever. Um, we are still very excited about the idea of a high risk, high reward class and making Jedi feel very special and unique, not just uh, you know, on our server, but in the game in general, right? We want it to feel like an achievement, feel like it's all the things that make Jedi and Star Wars beautiful, right? But alpha class is hard to balance, obviously, and so we have we're actually in the middle of some discussions right now about just how we want to go about the next Jedi update, which is where a lot of these things will change. We are going to be making, the leveling up process, the ranking up process, both for inside the FRS, which is, for those who don't know, the way that Jedi and Inquisitors will gain power within their ranks, and it has a lot of the same mechanics of the pre-CU FRS, which is to say there's like voting and XP and challenges and so on and so forth with that. But at the same time, I especially am very committed to making sure that this is not the kind of game where Jedi get to just log on and make everything about them, right? They're, especially with PvP, but also clearly with PvE, if so much of the game becomes tied to, a Jedi wants to have their main character moments, and they want to have this high risk, high reward moments. But if that comes at the cost of an entire group fight, or an entire week of PvP, or really just whatever, like, we can't make it so that a single Jedi logging on means that everyone has to now pay attention to them and kill them. That's not how this game works. This game is a complete game without Jedi, and so we are trying to make Jedi in a way that enhances the game, not takes it over. So some of the tools we're talking about doing this with is making certain aspects of Jedi get stronger only against other Jedi, right? Like having your strength in the Force grow, and manifest it against other Jedi, against other Inquisitors, against Jedi NPCs, right? All sorts of things like that, because that makes their game feel special, but without, too heavily interfering with the rest of the game. But we also, of course, think it's very important to make sure that, like, you're ranking up or your mastery of the Force still does affect everything else. So when you're becoming a Jedi Knight or a Jedi Master, those things will come with higher stakes, higher strength, and higher consequences. So yeah, again, it's very difficult, and there's a lot of strong opinions about all of this. And so the challenge is really just getting everybody. It's coming up with something that delivers the goals and the feeling that everyone wants without ruining the game. And so we are actively discussing those sorts of things, and hopefully we'll have a solution to present to you in the Jedi update with regards to making Padawan all the way through Master fun and fair, and still feel like Star Wars.
Great, thank you. Speaking of, let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about bounty hunter and asymmetric PvP. Players brought up improvements to bounty hunting terminals and tracking, better tools, incentives, counterplay, more meaningful cat and mouse mechanics. So, what makes asymmetric PvP systems compelling long term, and how are you preventing them from becoming either oppressive or irrelevant?
These are also very hard questions. With bounty hunting especially, right? We are working as hard as we can to make sure that you're not just incentivized to take 3 bounty hunters and not even have a real fight, um, and just to collect the bounty and ruin someone's day because that's fun and like that's what being a bounty hunter is about, which honestly is fine. But the obviously just the way that the sandbox works, there's so many different ways to escape, and it just it makes it all messy. So actually the biggest way that we're trying to improve this situation is there's 2 aspects. One is to just make small scale PvP more balanced, right? We have done a lot of work to balance group fights, especially in the mid range of 1 to 2 groups on each side, 8 to 16 or so, and less less work on making sure that just like individual fights are better balanced. And so if we can, I think, deliver a way where you can solo bounty hunt and still have fun, and if you can also deliver a way for Jedi to be able to win and still have fun and have a reason to win, right? That's the second part is that we want to make sure that Jedi actually have a good reason to fight. And some of that will come with the FRS, with Bounty Hunter killing XP and so on and so forth. But we have long talked about ways to reward Jedi for defeating bounty hunters beyond just reducing their visibility, which is what it does now. And so, yeah, I think it's very. I know a lot of people talk about this being a bounty hunter server and everything, which obviously is not the goal, but because of the cat and mouse mechanics, the mouse always has more tricks than the cat because it's a sandbox game and all the mouse has to do is find the next way down the line of avoiding an entire game mechanic, and that's not fun for anybody. And so that's why those keep getting clamped down, and we are again coming at this from a few different angles to try and just make sure that that part of the game is fun.
Well, why
So
don't we
hopefully that
drill
answers.
down for a minute into one of these really specific examples that comes up a lot, which is group TEF, or, if bounty hunters attack Jedi, should their friends be able to defend them? If Jedi attack a bounty hunter, should other bounty hunters be able to join in the fight? How do we figure out that dynamic, and who should be able to attack who when? Because I think there's, a lot of differing opinions on that, right? And it goes into that cat and mouse game, but it also just fundamentally alters pretty much every battle you can have as a player if you either play with a Jedi and can't help them, or if you're hunting Jedi and can't attack them. So can you tell us a little bit more about where we're going on that?
For a while, we experimented with the idea of a group TEF, which I think has been um, advocated for by the community, where if it's just as simple as if somebody attacks somebody in your group, then you can defend them, and um, that is a path that would address some of this, but unfortunately, it also came with quite a lot of other problems and with griefing and so on and so forth. So it's just a very, again, like the core challenge here is that we're trying to make this beautiful, balanced, uh, you know, isolated game mode in a sandbox game And so it's very challenging in that sense. And so we aren't going to be doing anything too much in that direction of helping out your friends, because whenever you want to, for every time that there is, oh, I just want to jump in and help balance out the fight, there is the opposite side of, oh, I just want to join my friends, and instead of a 3v1, now it's an 8v1. So it's because due to the sandbox nature. So as far as solutions that we're looking at, really it's going to come down to expanding in the incentives and the rewards and the rankings, where once Inquisitors come on the scene, Jedi versus Inquisitors is going to be a whole new dimension that we can play with, and so then we don't have a solution for the multi-hunter thing. I think that there are some changes being made there to it's just ensure that you can't like hold on to a bounty offline. So that change is coming to make sure that the balance is fair, and also it'll scale up with fewer and the rank of the Jedi. So if you're a Padawan, maybe you won't get 1v3'd, or if you're a normie, you certainly shouldn't get 1v3'd. So those sorts of mechanics are going to be changing. We're going to be making sure that it more often than not is trying to become like a 1v1 or a 2v1 in a Jedi situation, and scaling up as it's needed. But still keep it as a solo isolated game mode as much as possible.
And we just made a change that's coming for space as well, right? What was that?
Right. We are making a change to the way that bounties are claimed in space, because that was again a way that Jedi were able to kind of escape hunts is going up into a yacht, or just being in space and getting killed that way would make them avoid being ghosted, and so on and so forth. So we are making a change so that if you are killed in space as a Jedi with a bounty, that will still count as a bounty kill, which comes with all the same implications of you will get ghosted. And I know that's not exciting, but we are looking. I mean, Gruick is in here, has certainly advocated for the issues with that approach, and so we are trying to find ways to make sure that it also doesn't just kill all ability for Jedi to be in space. So, but yes, be aware
And
of that.
that's what I advocated for.
Yes, you could have Aconite just turning off space for Jedi, but sorry.
And speaking of, let's jump into our next topic, which interplays really well, which is how we integrate the ground and space game. We got lots of questions about expansions of space content, how space ties into the GCW, whether space will remain optional or become foundational. So what can we talk about in terms of designing parallel gameplay systems so they enrich each other instead of fragmenting the player base?
This is a great question. And the honest answer right now is that is not something that we are integrating into this upcoming GCW update, is more tying between the two per se, except for just the fact that everything in the GCW is going to affect the broader system, right? Just as it kind of does now. But I agree. I think that this kind of ties into the previous question, where in Star Wars Galaxies, there are a lot of kind of closed loop content that exists in this larger sandbox game, and it's really, really tempting to keep things narrow and keep things isolated and fragmented, right, per this question. But the beauty of the sandbox is when those things actually can have interactions with everything else. And so in the case of space and ground, the key here is to give both aspects of the game, make each of them rewarding and impact a larger world, focused on just what's fun, right? We don't want to make it so space is quote unquote forced. Like it says, make it remain optional, but tying in ways that, yeah, like if you enjoy space, you should be able to play space and it should feel like it's impactful, and you should be able to have interactions between things, right? So instead of just having space get turned off for Jedi, we are trying to find ways to make that more exciting. And I think I did actually forget to mention this. One of the ways in which we're going to make it more fair for Jedi in space, given this new pressure, is that we are thinking about adding an updated Jedi starfighter for Jedi. And so that's a way to tie these sorts of things together.
And with that little teaser, without any additional information, let's shift gears a little bit. Cfarf, I want to start with you as we talk about this one. This theme is modernization versus legacy authenticity. And I think it strikes at the core of both how we design assets and content, as well as our larger systems. Players ask about a lot of modern MMO features like ready checks, target markers, user interface improvements. How do you think about an approach modernizing, our legacy game without erasing the legacy part of it that made it feel so special in the early 2000s?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think about that a lot when we're designing new assets. I know this question seems like it's more geared towards the user interface and some of those areas, but I think it applies to a lot of different things. I know, like, for at least the visual style, it's always a little bit of a challenge to try to, how do you make this this new world that you're introducing, or these new clothes, or this new armor set or whatever, how do you make it look like it belongs in this game as if Sony had made it? And so that's a lot of times when I'm trying to create some things that are at least visual, I'm thinking, does this look like something that if Sony had kept up the game and Star Wars Galaxies had continued development for however long, does this belong in it, or does it look like like it doesn't belong? So I think that's important. I think there are some gameplay aspects that are, that feel, aged in Star Wars Galaxies. The way objects are handled and moved around, decorating can be kind of challenging. The user interface can be challenging when you first hop in. The controls feel a little bit different than, they're different than modern games where, the camera is locked to you, and modern games let you strafe rather than turn when you hit left and right. So I think these small improvements are good, and they definitely help players with quality of life and help them drop in and feel like they're playing something that you want the player to feel like they're in the game. So I think when it comes to stuff like that, it can help. But as long as it has the core and it has the spirit of Star Wars Galaxies and it feels like it belongs, then I'm on board with it.
Yeah, I'm happy to confirm that ready checks are, one of the things that we can absolutely do and can confirm we will implement. And same with health numbers on the health bar. Technically already implemented. It's just not enabled on the back end, and something we have to do a little work on to improve. But those are things that are coming, and we have some other UI related enhancements just like that are on the way as well. So I think, overall, just to wrap up this question, in general, we, especially at the user interface level of the game, where it's not necessarily content, we're, definitely capable of adding in more modern features, but and there's not really any limitations in terms of legacy authenticity that we think about and in terms of the feature itself. But of course, as we design it, the aesthetic of it, and how we want players to experience it, we do think about that historic and legacy aspect. And this kind of takes us into our next question. Orange, you can start with this one. Preservation versus evolution. As we're both developing new content like Nar Shaddaa and adding in expansions, what is too far from the original SWG? There's always going to be a lot of questions or occasionally accusations that we're a CU server or claim to be, which we certainly don't. What do you think about, how we engage in this preservation effort versus evolution effort?
Yeah, this is a great question because I think about this a lot because it's very ironic, I think, that our server's name is SWG Restoration, and yet we're also one of the servers that is trying to push the furthest ahead, right? From the base game. And the short version of this is that and we talk about this all the time. When you first log into the game, when you're a new player, when you're coming in, it needs to feel like Star Wars Galaxies. It needs to be the game that you remember. It needs to have the same, like I think some of the ways that we do this are still having a lot of the game centered around Mos Eisley. I know that that's not everyone's favorite, especially for veterans, but if logging into Mos Eisley is a very core memory for a lot of returning players. Even and I know a lot of pre-CU players got to do like Coronet and Naboo and all this sorts of stuff, but our version of that is Mos Eisley. So, like for example, I don't think that we would make new player starting area turn into Nar Shaddaa. I think that would be a line. I actually think that UI is another aspect of this. I would not want to modernize it so much that it becomes, it feels too new. It feels too different. Like when you first log into the game, it needs to be the same kind of UI, the same style. So those are the examples of lines that I think we want to keep. And the skill trees, like we have renamed a couple of professions. We have added a couple new ways to unlock professions, but it was also very important to me and to keep ability names the same and to adhere to original game design principles around like the combat diamond, which is a documented SOE way of trying to maintain the combat balance and keeping the profession identities the same while also pushing them into new and fun ways. So those are the kinds of trade-offs that we make, but we do not see this game as a museum. We see it as a living game. We want to make this game feel like what would have happened if the NGE had not happened and instead the game developed from there. If they kept true to the skill trees, they kept true to the sandbox principles, but kept that in content and kept growing the game in the ways that it has. And so, yeah, that's our goals. And I think that I'm very proud of the balance we're striking, because I think we still do see a lot of new players showing up and being like, wow, I am brought back to this game, and I'm also so excited to see all these new changes. So
Great. And I just want to take us to our final panel question before we do some rapid fire answers to questions that were submitted and close out with some questions from the chat. This question is about content cadence and sustainability. It's I think there's often questions from players about how often we'll be shipping new content, whether systems will be expanded or abandoned, how feedback influences prioritization. The way we kind of synthesized this question was about the pace of development in a volunteer-driven project without burning out the team or community. I'm going to talk about this a little bit because I think it's one of the things that I really care about, and also have still tried to influence as much as I can. And that's, one of the things about having a volunteer project that can make development challenging isn't just real life, it's also real interests. And oftentimes the interests of the player base don't necessarily match the interests of what the developers want to work on. And maybe we can talk about this a little bit, and how we've navigated it. But Jedi has been a big one where we very early on, 2-3 years ago now, invested so much of our resources in developing Jedi, and the inciting incident, and the initial unlock story, and the village. And the development team kind of burnt themselves out on Jedi, and we had made these big promises about Inquisitor and about color crystals and Ilum, which is something we've pretty much cut completely. And we were really burned out, and kind of dreading even this year as we planned the roadmap. Jedi has been this thing that we feel like we have to do, not that we necessarily want to do. And that's not speaking for everyone, but there's certainly a friction, right, where it's hard to balance the interests of what our volunteer developers want to work on versus what our community is asking for. And that's certainly one thing I'd highlight is why there might be a variance you see in what the roadmap says versus what the community asks for. And there's also the aspect where the bird's eye view that developers have is, especially the developers that don't play the game as regularly, versus the really committed view that some of the other developers have and the players have, are very different. So we often see things differently in terms of how we make decisions, especially for the long term. I, very often talk about the decisions we have to make that we know aren't going to be popular, and how we have to hide them in updates so we don't ruin everybody's vibe with an update where one thing where we have to nerf something for the economy is the only thing players take away, and then other developers end up discouraged because content they worked on doesn't get highlighted as much. And balancing that is particularly challenging as well. So I just wanted to talk about some of the things we have to strike a balance between. But Orange, do you have any other thoughts you want to share on this?
Yeah, I think this is something that we learn a lot over time, and thankfully a lot of the core team has stuck around. We have had a really stable but growing development team for a long time, and so we're all kind of learning what works best for us. I think that this, with especially expanding horizons last year, and the pattern that we're falling into of a big annual update, we are learning how to best fit in the most that we can and make a big splashy update in a way that doesn't make us want to kill ourselves, frankly, because this is quite a lot of work that we're not getting paid for, and we don't need to be paid for. Like, we really love it, but it is when there's 2 weeks left before a big publish, it feels more like a job than a volunteer role, right? So there's that. But one of the aspects of this that you end up seeing on the outside a lot is when we do make these sorts of promises that don't fall through and don't pan out the way that we expected, because one of the things that's a side effect of the fact that it's really exciting to build the game in your head, right? To design the perfect, most fun thing that you can imagine. And it's a lot less fun getting that out into building that in the game, thinking about all the ways it's going to interact with this, that, and the other. Getting it tested, getting feedback, realizing that, oh, it's going to ruin this and that. And it's that's why a lot of the empty promises kind of happen. Not that, like, we are getting a lot better about that, I think, but even today, I think we've previewed a lot of things, and there's a fair chance that a lot of it won't go that way. And so we are entering a phase, I think, where we are going to be moving a bit more slowly than before, because we are very happy with the game's growth and the amount of players we have now. And obviously we want to keep getting bigger and keep doing all the things that we're really excited about. But I can imagine it feeling a bit different from the pace we've had over the past couple of years of like a big update every month and a lot of the Senate having a lot more sway over every single aspect of the game. We just don't have as many updates planned, but that doesn't mean that we're kind of less interested. It just means that we're trying to balance it better and make sure that we can deliver this for years and years and years to come.
And Cfarf, can you talk a little bit about this too? I think many people, on the outside might be surprised to know that you're both the art lead, but also the only artist that supports the server currently in terms of making new assets, whether that's buildings or weapons or clothing. Can you talk a little bit about, how you balance that and your journey in terms of how you stay motivated and also put up with all of the competing requests that get thrown at you through the content development life cycle?
Yeah, certainly. I have had help in the past, but lately it's just been me working on the art. As far as Nar Shaddaa, I've been doing all the structures and materials and textures for all that. It is a lot of work, and it does take a lot of time. I think it can be, keeping myself motivated, seeing players enjoy the things that get put into the game is, I think, what makes it all worth it. So I think, Nar Shaddaa is a lot of work because we build a million assets before, like we had to spend months in Blender just making objects and experimenting with textures in Photoshop and doing all this before there was ever a place to walk around in. So that can be tough because you're not getting that immediate feedback loop. So it's nice for some of these other patches to, throw a backpack in and some wearables, something for players to customize their character so that they can look a little bit different and feel like they exist in the Star Wars universe in a way that they couldn't before, because now they look like a character that they've seen in a movie. So adding those things in that players get to enjoy, it definitely helps with the motivation, and it helps keep us going.
Great, thank you for that. And with that, we're going to move on to our rapid fire answers to your questions section before we close it out with any final questions from the chat. So if you do have any other questions, we'll try to get to a few as we close out. So be sure to submit those, and we're collecting them before we get to the end. But just to rapid fire through some questions you submitted that we have answers to. New player housing, when? The answer is it's complicated. As we talked about briefly, it's pretty hard to make, and we do know there are a few houses that haven't made their way to the game yet, but we're also very concerned about aesthetics. So we haven't made any decisions about how new housing just yet. Allow multiple selections in your inventory. We're working on it, but it is not a priority. Get buff docs out of the doorways of hospitals. Coming soon. More coloring options, perhaps a color wheel, planned for the anniversary update as we mentioned. Updates to heal powers for Jedi, late 2026, as we talked about. That's when Jedi can expect changes. Ability to filter bounty hunter missions. Working on developing it, not a priority. Can Jedi or smugglers hunt bounty hunters? No. See Developer Diary Part 4 on Jedi. It's harder for new players to get established or get credits. We know, we're working on it. There will be a developer diary soon on the game economy. Bring back the Galactic Marine backpack? Sure. Can we get another character slot? No, we regret giving you 3. Special edition goggles available on the Fortitude vendor with publish 1.4. Will the level cap be raised to 90? No. Add an option to remove names from storyteller items, city decor. Sure. Grant Jedi the ability to see their visibility level. No, opaqueness is intended. See every time we've answered that before. New ships. Not a priority at this time. More people in a group. We won't increase group size because it messes up other things, but we have experimented with multiple parties being able to join together so you can at least communicate. So it'll look like your groups are joined like a party system, similar to that of some other MMOs. We're working on that, but it is not a priority. And with that, we'll take our final break for audience questions. Let's see what we've got submitted. NPC bounties getting stuck in buildings or water getting fixed. Yes, we have fixed pieces of it. There are other pieces that are broken. We're aware of it. It's being worked on. Water is new to me. I would want to know more about that. Submit a bug report. Jedi sanctuaries, more Jedi sanctuaries added to the ranch network. I'll take this one too. There will be a total of 3 sanctuaries ever. You can expect another one. More details at another time. Moving group frames like the group window will be separatable. Potentially. Any more lightsaber hilts being developed? You could probably expect that from the Jedi update. That seems like a reasonable thing to expect.
I'll
So,
jump in with
maybe
this too. We also have the old hilts that were in the original game still that got changed with restoration, and so at the very minimum, those will be coming with the Jedi update most likely.
Great. Any insight into how the team thinks about updating older content to be more challenging / rewarding fortitude token? Rewarding, like, sorry, I read Fortitude tokens, but that's Fort Tuscan. Geocaves, Avatar platform, Squill Cave, etc. Great question. I wish Fuego was here to talk about this because he is planning to make some passes on some older content. But it's also challenging because some stuff is intended to be part of either legacy or part of a specific difficulty level, and making everything end game kind of has its own consequences. It will not have its own resources in that sense, but there will be other implications to the crafting system, as well as lots and lots of spice. Is anyone on the team currently working on the older quests that have been switched off? No. Would love to. Priorities. Here, more playable races. Cfarf, why don't you talk about whether or not you want to do that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that would be nice to do. I think after the last update, it did take a massive amount of time to put those in. The actual species themselves was not the biggest hurdle. The biggest hurdle was all the existing wearables that are in game. So for every head that we put in that's different from all the rest, it means that all those helmets and hats and glasses and the glowing eye things, like all these things, they all need new models and new meshes and lots of data table updates. So it was, I forget the number. I think it was like 27,000 cells that needed to be updated in the appearance table for the last species update. So it was a lot of new cells added, like of manually editing these spreadsheets, these data tables to determine, and that's outside of the modeling. So yes, Would like to put in new species, but there's going to be a little bit of time before that happens.
Yeah, I'll give a quick comment on custom UI color palettes. Part of the reason that's challenging is because our UI is not built the same way that other SWG servers are, because we've made custom modifications and improvements. So we really need to build out a tool to enable you to build custom UI palettes, because there's currently no viable way to implement them without basically doing a lot of manual debugging yourself. But that is not a priority. We got a quick question. Why did the watchtower on Naboo move from Theed? Orange, do you know that? Because I don't know that.
Yeah, that was just, there were some NPCs that had a whole, yeah, there were just some NPCs that pathed over it that weren't really balanced and fair. So we just moved it to another city. Because it also had issues with Theed due to like Empire Day and stuff. So Kadara just made it easier to keep balanced.
Got it. Some questions about lot sizes with structures. Stay tuned on that for some more with the city update. We are going to do a pass on those. I don't want to comment on any specific lot sizes at this time. One question about gambling, whether it will be competitive or just you versus the system. Both. So there will be player-to-player games where players can sit down at a table and play in games, and there will always also be system games, but just remember the house always wins. And then finally, two quick questions. Are we ever getting to a higher difficulty than Nightmare? There are no plans for that at this time. And any plans for more emotes or roleplay related social systems, marriage system expansion? I don't know that we've thought about expanding the marriage system, or particularly what we would do with that. We welcome your ideas on player voice or connect with your social senator. Oh, and are we getting more shuttles on TAT yet? Stay tuned for the city update, where things will be changing. We don't have too many details we're particularly ready to share on that yet. More plants and deco for inside and outside. Always looking to add new things. Does come with the requirement that we engage our, of course, one-person art department to do. And we are continuing to experiment with the ability to decorate outside of your structure, but have not completed that yet. And that's going to be our last question. We thank you for your attendance, and we're going to share a link in the chat. We'd love for your feedback on today's gathering. I'm going to just post that link there. Anything else you want to share about how we did, how we can improve these in the future, or anything else, feel free to just post it there. It's anonymous, just a single question, share whatever you like. And we will be reviewing that as we plan for the next one. Thank you, everyone, again for your attendance today. We really enjoyed the opportunity to speak with all of you and share more about how we're planning our roadmap for next year and what comes next. Orange or Colin, any final comments?
No, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I know that there's always more questions that we then we have time to answer. This is a new experimental format, which if we do it this way, will have to be a lot less frequent because it's obviously a lot of work. But yeah, just very eager to hear about what you guys think about either of these.
Yeah, appreciate you guys all coming. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.